Welcome to Giant Radio, where we're all about big ideas in sales and marketing and eye-popping discussions with successful entrepreneurs. Turn up the volume and settle in. Now, here's the founder of Giant Jacks Media and your host, Paul Hitchcock.
Hi, everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock. Welcome to Giant TV. Really excited to have my two guests here, Meshell Baker and Tomasevic. This is going to be a great episode here. Thomas is an amazing Vistage chair in the Pacific Northwest region. We're going to hear about his practice here in a minute. And I know, Thomas, having your thumb on the pulse of helping your network of CEOs and C-suite executives, you align with people like Meshell. Meshell is our chief confidence igniter. And we were talking beforehand, and really I took away a great saying from you, Meshell. What you're focused on is transforming companies and people from chaos to productivity. So we're going to get into that big topic here. Thomas, I'd like to start with you. Tell us about your Vistage practice. What are you doing? What are you focused on there?
Got it. Thank you. Good to see you, Paul. Hello, Meshell. So primarily objective of Vistage practice is to help CEOs and high level executives to grow, to not be alone, to have a consult, to have kind of an advisory board that is their own, where they are actually a member of the advisory board to others, and they have a group of people that are advisory board to them. So Vistage is organized in small groups of about 15 to 20 people. We meet monthly. That is kind of the peer group that we participate in. I'm a leader of about 5 groups as of today, 2 in Hawaii and 3 here in Seattle. And they're pretty full groups, and they are comprised of people who are in the state of mind that we call it state of mind of curiosity and growth. Growth-minded people personally are kind of an expectation to be the starting point for everybody. And I just recently celebrated 20 years for one of the members who finally is retiring. But nice. 20 years with this group is something that is remarkable. And so his name is Don Nelson, and I am very grateful for having him as a member of the group. And so that is basically what tells you that some people find lots of value in these groups. Average membership of the group is about 7 years. So the type of things that we are discussing right now have to do with economy and have to do with people as resources. Economy is a big question mark, and I'll probably have a separate video on that. We have some information that is shared with us from the ITR Economics. It's an organization in San Diego that essentially looks at forecasting.
The Bulio brothers, they're great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wonderful guys. Have a great team, and they are very good source of potential changes in the future. So we rely on that heavily. And then the biggest problem currently, and it's been the biggest problem for the last 4 years, is hiring. Hiring the right people and whatnot. This is still a employees market. There is more jobs than available people. We believe that may correct itself in 2024, 2025. And when I say correct itself, I think that we will get at a kind of equilibrium between the available jobs and available people. And that is an opportunity, and Meshell will talk about it, in gaining happiness. Whereas, right now, when you have too many options, you look for the one that pays the most. So employees we see are very unhappy where they are. I think it's great to have options, but to be honest with you, it's been proven that options do not lead necessarily to happiness. And then we have employers that are looking for employees, and they can't have enough employees. So they're hiring just about anybody that applies. And that leads to actually this inefficiency where people who don't want to have the jobs are having the jobs for the pay, and they're not enjoying them. And then employers that are wanting to have people are having people who just want to show up. And the end result is kind of like this minimum engagement between employees and employers. And I think it always happens whenever we have some kind of uncertainty in the market, or when we have these imbalances in the market. So I hope that will fix itself. Yes.
Yeah, no, well said. And I've got a question, Thomas. So these issues you're bringing up, the economy, hiring, the benefit at Vistage is your CEOs, they're getting together in one room and they're discussing these challenges and helping each other out. I mean, and so talk a little bit about that. And are they really, in there in the gutter, coming up with solutions on those particular issues? And then what's your role in that scenario?
Thank you. So that is true. So we get together once a month. We have multiple one-on-ones between me and them. And essentially the objective here is to have as much support as any one of these executives needs to do the right thing. And as you know, you have a huge P&L on your shoulders. You have a group of people that are demanding answers. You basically are kind of like left without anybody to consult above you. And so, yes, we get into a grind of things. We get into the really difficult, sometimes life-changing choices and questions. So we discuss that as a group. And the benefit is that even though I'm a consultant myself, I'm a minor contributor to the group because there is 10 to 15 people who are there to answer the questions firsthand by being in the gutters, in the trenches with the rest of the group.
Yeah.
And so my experience oftentimes is used to put things into perspective. I'm a solution-minded person that essentially helps people get out of the rut and out of the trenches. So we do that a lot in one-on-ones. But when it comes down to being in a group of 15 to 20 highly excited and highly engaged people, there is no one person that shines. It's the whole team that shines, and I'm very happy to have my groups that are very, very strong. They are engaged. They are a variety of different businesses. They are from small to larger businesses, and that is really benefiting everybody. On a side note, self-promotion here, I've been recently promoted to a master chair, which is something that doesn't normally happen in the first few years of being a chair, which happened to me.
Awesome.
But essentially, at least there is some recognition that I think I'm doing things okay.
Yeah, no, I think you are. And you have some opening slots, Thomas, right? Who are you looking for now?
Well, so I have slots in Hawaii and slots in Seattle. Not that many, one or two. And essentially what I'm looking for is for open-minded people who are looking at growing their companies, who are struggling but have some success, who recognize the value of hard work and support, who are willing to support others, so kind of a person that has understanding that 20 people, 20 minds around are stronger than one. Right? People who are seeking that, people who will depend on that, people who would like to be part of that. So essentially what we say is we want people in the growth state of mind, and if somebody's in that situation, if they are hearing what they like, please feel free to get in touch with me.
Yeah, wonderful. And this is a great time to say that wherever you're watching this video, because we stream this everywhere, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, the contact information for Thomas and Meshell will be around the video. Highly encourage you to connect to both, reach out, find out what they're doing. And Meshell, there's a lot to chew on there. What Thomas was talking about, he's got a lot going on. And so let's get into this. What do we need to know about transformation from chaos to productivity?
Yeah, well, yeah, I really enjoyed what Thomas, Paul, thank you for having me here, Thomas. That was incredible. And what he speaks to is very true. So he's looking for growth-minded members. What I do is work with, individuals, teams, organizations to help them to curate and take from what they currently have and help these people transform to be growth-minded. That's when you're going from chaos to confidence, you're actually giving people tools so that they can see that they are the creator of their own chaos, right? And how do you step back in the midst of what you've been going to work every day in a culture of complaining and saying it's happening to you and it's unfair? And how do you take your current staff or the current group of people that you have and help them to elevate above the circumstances, help them to create a better workplace? Because one of the things that Thomas consistently mentioned was that there's a collaboration. So there's a collaboration of people in the trenches. Well, in many organizations, employees don't feel that sense of belonging. They don't feel that sense of being approachability to the leadership or their managers. So they feel an aloneness. And when they feel that aloneness, you become victim in your head and you start complaining. It starts to frustrate you. It starts to feel like obligation. And when you're in obligation, there is no growth. Right? So you're judging every situation at work as something that's happening to you or just happening. It's external to you, and there's no accountability around your capabilities to actually transform that and understand that everything that appears to be difficult or challenging is an opportunity to grow. The only time we grow as human beings is when we face the difficulties, the challenges, the setbacks, right? The mistakes. So when you help employees and you create that culture, that's where I come in, is to have those conversations with leaders.
I just got to interject one thing here, because first of all, you are in high demand speaking across the country to many incredible groups on this. I want to just make sure everyone knows that, and you're working with companies, but something you said is, when there's a problem with a sense of belonging, approachability, that to me has a lining of, it's not strictly a business thing, like a formal business process you can address and fix. It's a human, emotion. So how do you go into a company dealing with human emotions and process that out and transform? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, one of the first things that I actually do is, as I'm working, so when given the opportunity to have an expanded, because I do talk, so people bring me in for keynotes and presentations. Those are absolutely wonderful, but those are you're just dabbling in education, or it's just information, inspiration. You're not going to transform anybody from a talk. Transformation takes time. That's where you're actually giving them content, and they get a chance to engage in the content. They get a chance to have a feedback loop and coaching and go practice. It's the repetition that creates successful transformation, right? So that takes that's something that happens over time. And to speak to your question about the humanness, well, that's emotional, and they call it EQ, emotional intelligence, or I call it emotional mastery. Most adults in our society are ill-equipped to deal with change. They are complaining as soon as something unplanned, unexpected makes them uncomfortable, creates a sense of uncertainty to them, they panic. This is the average adult worker. It's just like, oh my God, they start complaining to a coworker, how unfair it is. They talk about it. They call somebody, they're complaining about it at home, not realizing that they are very equipped to be part of the solution. And that's when, and Thomas mentioned it, it's that curious. Instead of being critical and judging the situation, become curious about how you can solve, how this can be better, how you can create. And that's where the belonging and the having the culture where you can reach out to somebody and start having different types of conversations that work, that elicit those changes and transformations.
I love it, because Thomas, you're smiling, and I just want to get your input on what Meshell is saying, because things that she's saying, culture, all these, I mean, how is it coming up with you, and what are you noticing there?
Well, I want to learn more about Meshell, because I want to see how can we get that goodness everywhere. So, so many things I echo with. I mean, this is wonderful, Meshell. Thank you so much. So I like the point that you have made, that when people are in trouble, that is when they learn. And yes, I have found the same thing, and that is, of course, you and I will do our best to prevent the failure. But let's face it, failure is the time when all of us open up to the possibilities.
Yes.
And that is an amazing psychology of people that is contradictory to our objectives to succeed, to our objectives to grow and whatnot. No, very quickly we go either from the state of victimization to a state of knowing all, right? There is no in between, that space where really we should be to actually learn and to enjoy and to grow. So well explained, Meshell. Thank you so much. I wanted to learn a little bit about the how do people get into the habit of repetition to learn these things? What is your experience?
Oh, well, my experience, thank you for asking. My experience is it's starts with helping them create something that's compelling for them. So an interesting question, if you have employees or people that you work with, ask them why they work there. Ask them, what does success in your role look like? Most employees cannot answer you because they've never thought about it. They've never created it. They are just trying to get by. Trying to get by is mediocrity. And I tell people, mediocrity and amazing or have never met each other. If they walk past each other on the street, they wouldn't recognize each other. So people want amazing lives, right? So when I ask people in the audience, do you want an amazing life? When I'm talking to an organization, I was at UPS on Friday. How many people want an amazing life? 100% of the people hands go up. Well, you'll never get to amazing from mediocrity. And if you're just trying to get by, unbeknownst to most people, they have never had a conversation or an interface to understand that that's what they're doing. You're intentionally creating difficulty in your life. And this conversation is the opportunity to transform into something incredible.
Well, that's why I think that us having motivational speaker like yourself is the cat's meow, because it shakes people out of their desperation, it shakes them out of their hopelessness, and puts them into the state of curiosity, happiness, and most of all, they believe that it is possible for you, and then they believe it's possible for them.
Exactly.
So, what is your happiest moment in your presentation? What causes you to shine up?
Oh, I mean, the entire presentation where I get to tell them with the storytelling parts where I'm actually telling them about a client that transformed, or I'm telling them about my own experience of transformation, but just making them aware. Like when I make a point and I go, I want you to understand, almost nobody in this audience has never heard this before. I didn't hear this before, right? I learned this because I was curious about how I could have a better life. And the reason you're sitting in your seat is more than likely you want a better life. So this is not rocket science. This is all accessible to everyone in this room. So just that reiteration. So that's something I repeat on a loop in different ways throughout the talk, making them aware this is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And it's the most, it gives you the outcomes will far exceed any effort that you put forth, far exceed. But it does require resilience, repetition, right? It's going to take everything in the beginning because you're that double down, right? People don't understand when you're transforming. When you start, you're doing two things. You're the old person and you're trying to be a new person all at once before it sinks into your identity. And you can't integrate it without consistency. It's impossible.
And you're the living proof that it can be done. And so that I think is a very, that's what people respond to. In other words, from this state of desperation and a hopelessness that many of us unfortunately live in without our own guilt. It is just that we never had the chance to experience that things build on top of each other. And if you are at it long enough, you end up being in the situation where you see the potential and you celebrate it every day, and your attitude just shines through, straight and wide. So I remember we were chatting and you told us a little bit about your story. So what would be your recommendation, reflecting on yourself? How do people get and stay in this curious state?
Well, my recommendation is one, create I call it a clear, captivating goal that compels you. So I don't do small dreams, right? The road to amazing is not crowded, believe it or not. To having an amazing and incredible life, it's not crowded. Everyone is attempting mediocrity. That's why it's so hard at this stage of just getting by in the struggle and making ends meet. Dream big, because the bigger the dream, the more incredible you become in the process. So what is the thing that I call it nervous-sided? What is the thing that makes you nervous but excited, right? So if it happened, it would be the cat's meow. It's something that makes you tingly all over. You get everything in your body is just aware. Everything lights up when you go, oh my God, if I could do that. That's the thing every human being is meant to follow, because you elicit from yourself courage and confidence and resilience and determination, things that no one can take away from you. Once you become it, they can't take it from you. Everything external to you is finite. Everything that's internal is infinite. Become, and that's the gift. That's what I tell people. Focus on who you're becoming, because once you become him or her, all the what will be attracted and show up. So many people are hitting an end. They're going like, oh, I want a destination. I want a promotion. I want more money. I want a house. I want a car. Those are finite. Become someone, right? Who is the person who has the promotion, right? Once you become that leader, you will always be a leader. And everywhere you go, you will be elevated, and opportunity will meet you somewhere. But if you just try to get the promotion, that's different from becoming a leader.
I love it. I love it. I used to work for Microsoft, and Microsoft is really made up of some amazing people. And we had this joke that reflected what you're talking about. And oftentimes somebody in the meeting would say, we have to do the right thing. And then, of course, we would have to do the right thing, right? That's basically what leaders do. But our joke was, oh, but I heard that right thing is so hard to do. You know, that was kind of our joke of saying, like, we know we need to do the right thing. We do that every day, right? But since I've never done it and you suggest that I need to do it, I'm going to pretend that I never heard of it. So this statement of road to amazing is not crowded is so true. And I love the fact that you have the, audacity to remind people of that, because so few people are on that road. And they're not competing, they're helping each other because there is so few of them. And that, fear that if I think Australians call it the poppy, the flower that grows higher than the rest of them gets cut. And so, and that's part of the Australian culture, which was something I was amazed to hear. But essentially what you're saying is that those flowers that grow taller, there is not that many of them. No. And they are the ones that are probably the most likely to be pollinated, the first one to be recognized for their beauty, etc., etc. It is not a hard life to live in as long as you choose it.
Yes.
Yes. And that is a hard thing, because excellence in one area usually leads to excellence in every area.
Yes. Yes.
So I had recently a presenter that really wowed me. She had a very hard upbringing and a story of ups and downs, similar to you, similar to most everybody's actually, right? It's just that sometimes we have physical ailments that we can name. So her name is Colleen Aylesbury, and she is from Midwest, and she is now talking sales, and she is really an amazing salesperson in every way. And she basically, when she was born, she had cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disorder that usually caps your life at 20 or 30 years. And she fought it and won. And she is now in her 30s. And she basically, what she did is she said, not even this is going to take me down.
Yes. Yes.
And so when you see these struggles, and of course, she won that battle and she won a dozen others. And she is now in the creme de la creme, so to speak, of successful people. I think those stories are possible, and nothing. And oftentimes that nothing can be really, really big, the nothing that holds us back, right? Whether it is nothing or something, we still have to own it, and we still have to win. And to be honest with you, I'm always humbled by seeing people who come from adversity, who come from pain and suffering to escalate themselves to this situation. And I think I'm one of them as well. But it is a beautiful story to see in others, because it gives everybody hope.
Yes, yes, yes. And I so agree with you, like coming from this difficult upbringing. So, for anybody listening, synopsis, my background, raised in a very urban area. I actually had 3 businesses when I was 13, but went through some trauma in my household because of alcoholic. Man, I just leave it at that, do the math. And by the time I was 20, I was incarcerated because it shredded my self-esteem, my confidence, and my self-worth. And then fast forward, I went back to college later in life, got my undergraduate, my graduate, did really well in sales, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and biotech, and landed in entrepreneurship because of a gifting of love to my sister. I left corporate to be her aide and somehow just got invited. So the journey of excellence, I tell people, even when I was in sales, I spent 15 years, I literally, the next best job would always call me, a prior colleague, a prior manager, a prior, somebody would call me and say, hey, this territory is open. Hey, we have an opening. Do you want to interview? And it was because excellence always finds opportunity. When you set out to just be the best at what you've been given, not better than anyone else, just the best at what you've been given, you will always be met with excellence. Everything has to create something to expand for you. And I find that many people don't know how to do that. So how do you discover excellence? Your willingness. That's where the belongingness, the willingness to be curious and ask questions, to ask for help, to do a Google search. I always tell people, if you don't know how to do something, turn it into a question. I don't know how to ... Then you put how on the front and how do you ... and Google it. Right?
And then you're ... expert.
You'll get YouTube videos, you'll get podcasts, you'll get books. Every answer you want is at your fingertips. There is no such thing as you don't know how. It's a choice. And reaching out. So the willingness to ask someone who's already succeeded or is succeeding for their wisdom, that people get so stuck in their head. And that's where the community and the collaboration. So like what you have at Vistage, this is where people are actually building that muscle, that there is no, it's okay not to know. It's amazing that how many people still feel bad about not knowing.
Yeah,
that's right.
Nobody knows everything. So it's okay not to know. It really is.
Meshell, you're absolutely right. But this is my version of offering repetition. Right. So basically, through our monthly meetings and our one-on-one, we all stay in the similar state of mind, which is things are maybe not easy, but they are not final. Right. I still matter. And that is a big, I think, learning that many people haven't had the chance to experience. And that is that if you say this will be done, right, and you commit yourself to that being done, it can be a small objective or a huge objective. And the most important thing that people forget is that they matter. Their presence and their audacity and their commitment to getting done is the biggest assurance that we have to see things to completion, to see things to success, even if the objective of our success is ourselves, right? So you matter. You're not a fly on the wall. If you decide that something is going to get done and you do everything in your power to get it done, that is not a random occurrence. That is an intention being materialized.
Yes.
In my before I became a Vistage chair, I was a consultant, and this was an interesting topic. And you kind of like are talking about things that people would say at the end of the journey. But the beginning of the journey for many people is the question is, well, my attitude is not so good. How can I, it's hard for me to stay narrow and straight. It's hard for me to stay on that yellow brick road, right, to success, right? How do I do that? And that is, I think the ultimate result is repetition. Mm-hmm. Keep yourself in the habit of trying and doing. Keep yourself in the habit of trying and doing. And in that discussion as a consultant, I oftentimes had, and the question was, how do I change my attitude? And there are three ways to change an attitude. One is an aha moment. So you're you're intensely expecting an answer. You're seeking it everywhere. You're Googling and whatnot. And there is this pressure for you to find an answer just boiling inside of you. And some event happens, information comes from somewhere, and that becomes your aha moment that can really transform you. Well, the only problem with that thing is that, of course, it is transformative and it is welcome, but you cannot cause it. It happens when it happens. Aha moments are not controllable. Another way of changing your attitude is when you have a huge outside impact, like a natural disaster. For some reason, these big social disasters that we sometimes experience, like a volcano, tornado, you name it, really straightens up quickly into solution solving and curiosity, state of mind, and humility. And that just straightens our attitude towards success like nothing I've ever seen. But again, What's the downfall? Downfall is that we don't want to go through the terrible experiences to have good attitude, right? So really, it boils down to what you have already said, and that is the way to build new habits, the way to change your attitude is to repeat, repeat, repeat.
I got to say something here because as an outsider taken away, both of you said are lomming on to something important. And I know, Meshell, you said to me earlier in another discussion, you've got to make the accountability of the process part of your identity. It just is something you do. And so you were just mentioning a bunch about accountability, execution. Thomas, you said something I've never heard a Vistage chair say before, and it absolutely is 100% true in my mind, is that your process, you as a chair, what everyone's doing there is the accountability, is the process, because I'm sure those CEOs that you work with, in their minds, they know the right thing to do to grow their company, for the most part, but it's the execution. And if there isn't a mechanism to be held accountable for the CEO, and Vistage is it, I just thought that was a brilliant thing to say. And when you're talking about, Meshell, you said too, that you've got to have this mechanism. I think of like the Tony Robbins thing, not to disparage the guy. I mean, the guy has good stuff, but people go there, walk on hot coals, and he says, do these 5 things when you get back to the office and you'll be successful. People do 2 things for 2 weeks and never do anything again, and nothing happens. So this to me is important. When both of you said is you've got to have this mechanism, identity to carry through. Take big takeaway from me.
Yeah. So and I agree with everything Thomas said, and you're highlighting that, Paul. And so humans have a propensity for being reciprocal. So we actually are by our nature is like when someone does something for us, we want to give back. That's the actual underpinning nature. Accountability, when you get in a group like Vistage, for example. So what people do is they set goals and they're accountable to someone else. So it seems like the goal is actually for other people, but what you're doing is you're setting it collectively, and it helps you be accountable because now you don't want to let other people down, right? So it actually helps raise you. It's like what is a Jim Rohn quote, where the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with? Remember, parents used to say, birds of a feather flock together, so stop hanging out with it is absolutely true that research and science has proven the more the people you hang around with determine the level of your life. What do they say? Your network is your net worth. And so being around people who are intentionally seeking to better themselves is everything. And that is, when I go back to the employee level, many of them have not experienced that. They don't come from environments where they were around people who wanted to better or improve themselves, or if they did, they were laughed at, or that person was actually challenged. So again, how the work that I do is helping people to see it is the greatest gift you can give yourself is to be a continuous learner, right? Learn to earn. Earn while you learn, right? However you want to say it, but it is the power. And having groups, right? So there's this fallacy that I'm grown and I don't need to tell anybody. It's not true, right? The people who are the most successful are always accountable throughout their careers. At some mastermind, some group coaching, some coaching, they invest in themselves. By nature, we are negative. And the way you get to abundance, that you get out of scarcity and get to abundance, you get to all the things that create an amazing life, requires that you invest in yourself. I always say, if you're not investing in yourself, why would anybody else?
Yeah. And I've got to say, when you mentioned that too, I just saw, one of the greatest tennis players in the history of the world, Roger Federer, was at a Warriors basketball game the other night. And I followed his career, and when he was playing, the guy was insane and crazy. He had a coach. And I always used to say, why would he need a coach? What can that coach tell Roger Federer? They all have a coach because it's accountability, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is one of the things, if somebody here from that is seeking a way to improve themselves, and it can be in multiple ways. You may have a team that is lacking in accountability. You maybe lack accountability towards your own goals and whatnot. A simple thing, to Meshell's point, is, how do we develop this muscle? And the beginnings are pretty easy. So my recommendation here is if you have a team that is not delivering what they say they would, it means that saying what they do is not sufficient. So in that kind of situation, so first of all, make sure that people understand what they are saying. They can explain it back to you. They can say it in short words in front of everybody and write it down. So in other words, that effect of physically writing down and not typing it in, writing it down on a piece of paper solidifies our commitment to what we are going to do. So some of the successful ways of dealing with this thing on either group or personal basis is when you end up crystallizing in your mind for a split second, because those things don't last for a long time. When they show up as a potential that we can live up to, write it down as your commitment. Have a list of those things. You know, whether you have a whiteboard where you're going to write those things down, whether you have a piece of paper or a notebook, just don't type it into digital stuff, because digital stuff in our mind is a passing by fancy. So in other words, there you go. So that is exactly what successful people do. We basically commit ourselves to something that is more permanent than our states of mind, our memory, or our moods.
Yes.
And so if we can get into the habit of that, that is a big step towards success.
Okay. So we go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, the one thing I remember learning years ago when I transitioned from being an employee to an entrepreneur, the rule for me has been that successful people are willing to make habits of the things they don't necessarily like to do, but deliver the results that they're seeking to create. Because once it becomes a habit, you can't not do it. It is your identity. It is integrated into your being. You don't think about it. It's just done. And that's where the masses struggle, because they're in that space of what I call the have to, need, the ought to, should. You're still attempting to do instead of create the habit. Exactly what Thomas said. And that's what coaches do. When you have a coach, I always say, get a coach and have them teach you a habit. If you get a result, that's one thing, because once they're gone, you're probably going to stop if it's not integrated to who you are. When you get a coach that helps you form habits, that's gold. And that's one of the things that I look at. How can we help these employees establish the habit of excellence, establish the habit of accountability, establish the habit of being curious and creative? That's absolutely powerful. And that's what Thomas is telling you he's doing with his Vistage teams.
Okay, we could be here for 5 hours. I could just listen to both of you talk forever. I love it. I get goosebumps when both of you are talking. It's very motivating, I got to tell you. And it's funny, Meshell, when I don't want to eat right during the week or exercise, I'm now in my mind is like, no, Meshell says it's part of my identity. It's what I do every week. You're living in my mind now. This is phenomenal, both of you. Thomas, thank you for sharing about that. And this is great for, again, all of you listening. Information on Thomas and Meshell is around this video, and get connected. 100% recommend it, and really appreciate everybody listening. Thank you, both of you, for being here.
Thank you,
Paul. Thank you, Meshell.
Absolutely great conversation, Paul and Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you.